everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Tuesday's edition. We're broadcasting from the great Midwest city of Chicago and from Southern California. Tom, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you as my guest today.
Oh, happy to be here. You know that, especially, man, we always got a lot to talk about, don't we?
You know, we always do, and I can actually finally say the never-ending election will end tonight.
Yeah, it will.
Assuming we can count the ballots as well as they did in the last election. But it is tonight is the last election, okay? Warnock and Walker, Georgia Senate runoff. I hope sometime in the very near future, Georgia changes their election laws, because I don't agree with Raphael Warnock on one thing, but he did make a comment the other day, and I talked about this, and I agreed with him. He goes, you know, he was talking to some reporter, he goes, this is the 5th time I've had to run for election for this Senate seat in 2 years. And I started thinking, damn, he's right. He won a primary. He ran in a general, didn't get 50, had to come in a runoff. Same thing happened this year, ran in a general, has to run in a runoff. Georgia needs to change their election laws. This is pretty insane stuff, Tom.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's you know, if you want to do something like this, go what Alaska's doing and have a ranked choice vote, right? Like, don't make them just keep coming back and keep dragging this process out. Like, if you want to have a higher standard, you want to have a higher standard, fine, but don't.
How about just the winner on election night wins, period? I mean, that, you know, like is the rule in most states. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes.
But anyhow, tonight it comes to conclusion, and Tom, the polls indicate Warnock with a lead anywhere from 2 to 3 points. And I've been saying really since election night, whoever wins this race, it's going to be a base turnout. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think necessarily the independents are going to come out as aggressively as they did in the general, because what kind of dog do the independents really have in this fight? I mean, you're sort of in that right, none. The Democrats already control the Senate. Okay, so, you know, there's no middle of the road contender on the ballot, just 2.
Yeah.
So I've said it's a base turnout election. Now, as you and I have talked on many times, if Republicans can't figure out early voting, it's going to be tough to win. And they go into the election today down 200,000. Now, again, we don't know who they voted for, but Democrats outvoted Republicans by 200,000. That's a tough uphill swing on election day. So if Republicans turn out their base, they could win. But if they don't, Tom, the polls will be right.
Yeah, no, I mean, you and I were talking about this when we were getting set up off air. I mean, I think it's Warnock by 2.5. He had roughly half a point on him in the first time before the runoff. I mean, I'm one of those people that you vote no matter what. I honestly have no idea which one of these two I'd vote for if I was in Georgia as a centrist. I don't know, maybe throw a dart at the wall just to, just I executed my constitutional, rights. I mean, it's because they're so polemic. And I think it is going to be a base thing. But at the end of the day, I think that the Democrats, they've done a better job of holding serve through this election cycle with their bases across the nation. They were able to do that, in Georgia to get it to where it was. And I just think that the other thing too is you have the base plus the incumbency, right? The top of the ticket name recognition, which can be valuable at certain times. And I think that when something's as close as this, and you have so many other people, like you said, that are independents that are going to bow out, and I agree with your assessment there, then I think that little bump is going to matter too. And I don't really see Walker's path for victory at this point. I mean, 86 million in television ads spent by both sides. So it's not like he had that spending advantage he was hoping for. Like we've talked about in the past about just, carpet bomb the airwaves. Warnock did it too. So,
well, Warnock,
I just don't want to see it.
Warnock outspent Walker 3-1. I mean, the Democratic Party, to put it in perspective, Tom, this is just astounding. They've spent just under $400 million on this race alone. Tom, that's what Mitt Romney spent when he ran for president back years ago. I mean, $400 million on one senator. I mean, a little bit under that, 3 and change. That is an astounding amount of money to basically target a sliver of people.
So I don't think it's that. I think that what it is that shows you just how much the Democratic Party does not want to be um, beholden to Joe Manchin. I mean, I really think that we've talked
Agreed.
about his
Yeah.
influence, and especially for me, is to me, it's just so obvious that because if they go to 51 and it's not 50-50, they need everybody but him or everyone but Kristen Sinema down in Arizona. And think about how much of an agenda push that can be. Think of how many things would have skated through because they wouldn't have needed Manchin. You know, they could have let him flip to the other side. Think about what Inflation Reduction Act. So I can't say that with a straight face. I'm sorry, I just can't.
Right.
What that would have looked like without him. Think about what that final, as we've now seen, very needless spending bill to for COVID that's led to a lot of this inflation would have looked like. I mean, I know that some Republicans hate him, and I've never understood that one way or the other, but like that guy was the voice of reason in the Senate. But, now if you want to be purely agenda and purely partisan, if you're 5150, you don't need him anymore. You don't have to listen to him. And I think that's what it is.
Yeah, you may not need him, but you and I also know that with Republicans in control of the House of Representatives, it's not likely any of those Democratic wish lists are going to get passed anyhow.
Yeah.
So it's sort of Pyrrhic victory, even if he wins. Where it's important, though, in my view, and people are going to go crazy hearing me say this, but in 2024, the election map really favors Republicans. I mean,
yeah, it does.
Republicans don't have really a single seat that they're in danger of losing. They really don't.
No, they
and
really
Democrats have to defend 8 seats in red or purple states. So to the degree they could have an extra little cushion here, if Warnock wins, I get it. Again, Tom, Georgia used to be a reliably red state. It turned purple. I would make the argument Georgia is still a purple state because of what happened with Brian Kemp as governor, Brad Raffensperger, a lot of the Georgia election officials. I mean, it is a purple state. It can go either way. But a point you brought up earlier, when you said, well, I would throw a dart, Raphael Warnock's a radical liberal. Okay, I mean, he doesn't represent your interest. I know that because I know you well enough. Herschel Walker will vote with the Republican Party, who will oppose these radical views of the Democrats. Okay, I get that too. But to me, it's a pretty easy choice. I mean, I donated money to Walker's campaign. I want him to win. I think Raphael Warnock's a radical liberal. But, the people in Georgia seem to be saying, well, he's a radical liberal, but we like him better than Herschel Walker, who, it's questionable if Herschel even lived in the state. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, but we had this conversation about Oz a lot more because I thought he was just a moron. And, oh, wait, the moron lost to someone who literally does not have the cognitive function. I mean, sorry, not sorry. I told you, I said it to everyone.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy is just that bad. Walker isn't quite that. He does have roots to the state of Georgia, but this is what you're seeing when you go for someone who's all hype and very little substance. Say what you want about Warnock, and I agree with you, super far left. Everyone at least knows what he stands for. They at least know the substance of his argument. And if you're going to have to hold your nose and do something, are you going to take a carpetbagger, which the South always hated? I mean, that just from a cultural standpoint, like you just don't waltz in like that. Or, are you going to, on the other side of the sort of centrist, hold your nose and, well, if this is the best I can do, so be it. At least you know where that guy stands. At least you know that he cares about the state. Like, I'm not saying it's right, but I mean, my goodness, like the candidates through this cycle that were either, super MAGA, and we can talk about that if you want to. I know you've talked about it a while, already, or just did not appear to be authentic to that district or that state, got whomped.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things, like you have to have that. That was a huge miscalculation for the GOP. That was a huge issue, and it came home to roost. And the thing was, they were avoidable, the World Cup's going on, their own goals.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm certainly not comparing Raphael Warnock to Fetterman. If Fetterman ran against Raphael Warnock, I'd vote for Raphael Warnock 100 out of 100 times because I think Fetterman's clueless. But, again, you're right. In Pennsylvania, we put up Dr. Oz instead of his opponent, David McCormick, who he beat by like 1/10 of a point. and McCormick
Mm-hmm.
maybe could have won that race. But anyhow, let's get back to something here. All right, so they're going to vote. We'll know tomorrow what happened. Well, we actually should know tonight probably, because Georgia
Yeah,
tends to run elections pretty well.
they do.
Something that I think is good news from your perspective as a vet, what you make of the House. The House of Representatives voting to repeal the vaccine mandate for members of the military.
I'm at the point right now where I've always thought that was just the silliest thing. Because at the end of the day, like, I got 9 shots to get vaccinated against anthrax. Okay, 9. Okay,
Oh, God.
it's what it took in the the late 90s, early 2000s to get that. And it's like, what bothered me so much about this COVID, do you or don't do, is the politicalization of something that had no place in it. You want to know what? If DoD leadership looked at this purely from the perspective of this is a risk mitigation in a combat zone implement, we are doing it like anthrax, then everything else around that's a nothing burger. I don't care. What bothered me about this entire thing is that it became, Matt Getz getting up in front of Milley and, that whole 3-ring circus, because the two of them just always seem to somehow find a way to make it political rather than, combat effectiveness, right? So if they think that they now have the medical capability and the medical understanding to where they can make that choice, like, that's where it's like, it's nothing but mission readiness and mission effectiveness to me. And if the DoD feels they're good, then cool. This is never something that Congress should have been involved in my opinion.
I think there's something going on. Someone's trading something for something, because
Probably.
you've got Pelosi and Schumer agreeing that this shouldn't be in there. The Biden administration wants it in there. So I'm thinking in the back of my mind, what are Schumer and Pelosi getting in exchange for, quote, giving this up? We'll see.
Yeah, I would agree.
Biden's visiting Arizona today.
Mm-hmm.
Drew a lot of criticism for going to a border state and not visiting the border. I know why he's going to Arizona, and it's pretty important. They're going to build 2 massive chip factories outside Phoenix. That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But Biden's comment, well, he says there's more important things to do. Look, Tom, you and I both know the Democrats are using this thing at the border. They want to increase the number of people coming through. This is like using it as a pressure point to try to get Republicans to the table long term on an immigration deal. And they're figuring if we flood the zone, eventually they'll have to come around. Where I think the Biden administration is miscalculating, Republicans are not coming around on this. Their position is illegal immigration is wrong. We should enforce our borders. They're not going to change those positions.
Well, and nor should they. And the other thing is what I've always found so disingenuous from the Democrat side about this is how they, and one of the few times that they're really good with the message, and how critical I've historically been about their messaging, they're really good about taking 90% of what everyone was crucifying Trump for in terms of, once you catch someone, like how you process them through and all this stuff. Their policies, 85, 90% of what his is, they're just smarter about how they package it, and they're just smarter about going back to their base saying, we're still, having more of a humanitarian bend to it. Like, nothing is going to change the fact that we have to secure the borders. Do I think that sometimes some of the legacy mid 2000s, almost 24ism of, the Middle Eastern terrorists crossing the border to nuke LA, I've always thought that was a little overblown, but the guns, the drugs, all the other things are still need to be protected. You still need to stop that. And you still need to, pay attention, saying nothing of just how much revenue is going into their pockets from the coyotes that are moving people across that border illegally. Like, there's so much that needs to be protected. There's so much that needs to be defended.
Let me ask you this, Tom. I agree with you on that. I mean, we can talk about the weapons coming across, the drugs, the fentanyl that's killing literally tens of thousands of young people every year. The illegal immigrants coming in, under Biden administration, over 2.4 million have tried crossing. There's, what, 500,000 that just got away that are in the country. We don't even know where they are. Tom, the thing that bothers me about it is Republicans pounded this as an issue prior to the midterms. The American people don't seem to care. I mean, Democrats clearly don't care. Republicans seem like they do care. Independents, some do, some don't. Politically, it just doesn't seem like that issue is really breaking into the top 4 or 5 issues with the aggregate American people.
Well, I think that it's when you start sort of ranking the issues, right? If you don't live on the border, this isn't going to rank nearly as high when you're top of mind with all the inflation you talked about, all of the economic
Hmm.
challenges, which is really where the Republicans, and rightly so, built their strategy is sort of their, their A block. And on the other side, with the Democrats, they don't want to touch it to begin with, and then they've got all these other things about your rights being chipped away and abortion and all these things for their A block. So both of those things are so core to the ideology of both sides that I just think it took the oxygen out of the room
Yeah.
on that debate. Same thing with sort of historic military stuff, right? Like the DoD budget and things like that with the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the winding down of stuff. Just the war in Ukraine didn't really resonate. You didn't hear that as a crazy thing other than um, are we going to continue to support them? And that got thorny across aisles. Like the far left and the far right both don't want to continue to support Ukraine, like for very different reasons. But that's where they both end up.
Right.
So neither side wanted to touch that one. And I just think that's where it all sort of happened. It's just this was a very national policy centric election cycle as opposed to a international, and border crossing, border patrol, border protection falls into that middle of a 50-50 ball. And I just think that there just wasn't a lot of oxygen for it. I think it's going to matter in 2024, especially if DeSantis gets the nomination, but I just didn't see it here for 2022.
I agree with you. Speaking of budget stuff, Kevin McCarthy has said to Mitch McConnell and some people in the Senate leadership, hey, no ominous spending bill here. You're going to tie our hands through most of 2023. Let's pass a short-term continuing resolution to keep the government funded and get it into January where Republicans can have input from the House. Tom, that makes perfect sense to me. I don't know why in the world our leaders would want to be going along with an ominous, fully loaded everything throwing in the budget routine here. I'm not sort of getting that.
So this is, of all of the things in American politics, and I know that's a big statement, that drives me the craziest and the most nuts, and I want to take every member of Congress and just smack them upside the head. This is it. Your entire function as the legislative branch of the government is to pass a freaking budget. Now, and the thing is that the Republicans are incoming, so they want it this way. If in 2 years the Dems take back the House, they're going to want to do the exact same thing. So please understand, this is not a partisan thing to me. This is literally your job thing to me, right? Like, why did I say like Fetterman versus Oz? Ultimately, I'm going Oz, like, because I didn't think he was capable of doing the job, period, no matter what I feel past that. He just didn't have the minimal viable. Your minimally viable job in all of this is to pass a budget. So do your job. Like, to both sides, because this is something they both do every single time, depending on who's coming in and who's coming out. And it just drives me absolutely nuts. Because, look, do I like omnibus bills? No, I don't. I think they're overinflated. It's the only way you can get pork legislation through at this point. I have 1,000,001 problems with it. Please do not misunderstand that I still want fiscal responsibility, period. Requote me. I want fiscal responsibility. But I still want to see the people that are inspired to do a single job do the job. And the fact that I've got to listen to this again makes me just want to, like, again, smack every single person upside the head in Congress.
You're not going to have a fiscal responsibility because even under the current budget, it's $1 trillion deficit. And, we have an economy that's roughly a $20 trillion economy, and the cumulative amount of debt in this country, I'm going to talk about that in tomorrow's show, but the amount of debt that's being carried in this country is double what our economy is. So we got some problems there.
Yep.
But I don't know. Again, it seems to me like if I'm a Republican, I'm sitting here as a senator voting on a budget, I'm going to I want to have some influence. We just had an election. Republicans are going to take over the House. They're basically giving you two false choices here. One, we'll keep 2023 spending levels. Well, they always increase it. Or this ominous bill. To me, it's both bad choices. I'd rather just get a continuing resolution, push it into January, and have the Republicans with a seat at the table to oppose Biden and the Democratic senators. That's my opinion.
I can't, I gave my wishful thinking answer. I can't disagree with you in the pragmatics of it. I really can't. It's just, again, it is every time I start seeing budget stuff, and I understand, because again, I got a degree in political science. I've lobbied, on Congress before for veterans' rights. Like, I understand, like the apparatus in the game a little bit, and just to see like how far they will collectively go to avoid making the decision that is supposed to be the most important thing they do just makes me want to scream sometimes.
I hear you. Well, let me ask you this. What do you make about all this Twitter stuff coming out about the suppression of the Hunter Biden story and how the White House basically calls it, old news. I mean, where are we going with this, Tom? I mean, it does appear from first blush something we already knew. And again, I have mixed views on this. Yeah, I want the truth to come out, but I don't want to spend a lot of time relitigating the 2020 election. To me, the American public, this is one case where I think the Republicans are right, but man, be careful how you use that political capital, because I can tell you this as a conservative. Most people don't care about this. And I hate saying this, but when the White House says it's old news and they fire back at Twitter saying, well, you got a lot of anti-Semitic, clearly lying, deflection. But my point is this: we better be careful about this and not just focus a lot of energy on this, quote, Hunter Biden story, unless some facts come up that shows money went to President Biden. Now, that's a different story.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, like, basically the Hunter Biden too long didn't read is Hunter Biden's a screw up. We already knew that.
Yeah.
Okay, like, we've known that for years. Hunter Biden's a screw up. Oh my gosh, you mean there's another way he screwed up? Like, come on. I agree with you. I think that the bigger story is more, and this is what's kind of getting lost, is just how influential in shaping opinions a social media platform can be based on the decision that they made. Like, the New York Post, which is run by the Murdoch family, which Twitter has always had a concern with, posted something that was true. It's not an arguable point that their reporting was accurate. This has been well documented at this point. But there was a concern about this, like, fake news and false flag, and it's like, I honestly don't blame, especially because Twitter is so quick. It's literally second by second, not minute by minute. I can understand there being some reticence if you weren't quite sure at the very beginning and sort of the crisis communications point of it, to be a little leery and to be a little cautious. I think that's a fair thing. And I think this also goes back to, like, this really isn't like the less of the story, and be careful with the capital. Where I do think everyone crucifying Twitter is completely right is, like, once you knew that it was accurate and you're still playing those games, like, that's no, you're a platform. You do not, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's where I have a problem with it.
Yep, I know, I hear you. So I'm just throwing a little cautionary note out there. Yeah, let's get it out there. Let's expose all the facts. But when we get into January, there better be some facts. If there's no facts tying Joe Biden into this, frankly, I don't want to hear about it anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Just my opinion. All right. Now,
I agree.
Now, some senators are throwing cold water on the idea that McCarthy floated of impeaching Mayorkas. Of everyone in the Biden administration, this guy is the worst. I mean, he is absolutely, the DHS secretary, in my opinion, is not enforcing the laws of the country. Now, is that a reason to impeach him? I don't know, but I'd sure like to see some investigations into Mayorkas. I'm not going to jump the impeachment shark just yet because, look, Tom, here's the reality. And this is something conservatives better learn to deal with. You can impeach the guy. There is zero chance he's going to be convicted.
Correct.
Zero. Now, I'm sort of a practical guy. If there is zero chance of a guy being convicted, then I don't want to waste time and energy. I want to point out through investigations what he has done and maybe put some political pressure on unless there is a clear violation. But I'm looking at some of these senators and I'm going, you know what, they're right. I mean, you don't impeach someone for doing a bad job. If there's a clear violation and intent to violate the law, okay, that's one thing. I mean, if there was tapes or things that came up where we caught Biden saying, hey, Mayorkas, don't enforce the border. Okay, privately that could have happened. I doubt something like that's going to ever show up. But we got to be cautious here again about dealing with grievances versus solving the issues that the American people care about.
I think that one of the wisest things I've ever been told in my life, and it came from my mom, and this was, I'd been in the Ranger Regiment for a couple of years, early 20s, and I thought I needed to fight everything. And she looked at me and she says, Thomas, you're a very smart person, but I would encourage you to do this. Choose your battles carefully. Know exactly why it is that you want to fight this battle. And if you are still sure, don't back down for anything.
Right. Good
This
advice.
is this is this is a nothing burger fight, right?
Yeah.
And just like Hunter Biden, it's one of those things where you just get. And this is the thing with like, and I say this as a centrist, right? I look at this like the Republicans just got their butts kicked in this last election. I don't care. They took the House over. They got their butts kicked compared to what it should have been. The way that this looked, there's a lot that the GOP is going to need to redo, to refit, to rearm, and to re-energize for 2024. Is this going, are these things going to help do that? The answer is they're absolutely not. The only people who care about Hunter Biden are the super far right, MAGA, Donald Trump, affiliates that just want to see that chaos, because they feel like they need to pay the Bidens back for what they did to their guy, right? Mayorkas isn't quite the same thing, but it's pretty similar to, it's like, we're going to try and take a pound of flesh now. That's no. You want to win in 2024. That's what you want. That's the goal. How do you get there? And this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, well, I want hearings on Mayorkas for sure, because I think he has been a derelict in his duty.
That's
I
fair.
do not think he's enforced it, but let's get the investigation first before we jump the impeachment
Correct.
shark. Now, Ron Klain said that Biden's going to make an announcement about his 2024 intentions probably in January. Tom, at this point, I don't see anything to indicate he's not going to run again. He'll be 82 when he runs for election. Do you see anything out there that looks like he's not?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, he got a ton, way more legislation passed than people thought he was going to get passed. He's got, he somehow just avoided what was expected to be this massive destruction of his party's, base and ability to influence policy. And now, I mean, look, as a centrist, I love how the House broke, and I love on some levels where the Senate is, because it's going to force compromise. And I appreciate that, right? But at the same time, if you're looking at the map, like, this is about the best case scenario that the Democrats ever could have hoped for. You mean a week and a half into the counting of the votes, they still thought they had a chance when, we were talking 2.5 weeks before. So it's like, he's still there. He still has cachet. He still has influence, and he's the sitting president. And everyone knows that you don't get rid of the guy. You know what I'm saying? When they're the incumbent, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't.
I got a little different take on it. He's at 42% approval after the election. Now, Biden clearly, all his faults and a lot of the things that he did which really were dumb, it didn't carry over to voters. They didn't make this election about Biden. There was nothing sticky about Joe Biden like Republicans thought. And that'll be different in 2024. And here's my point. We are likely to see some type of recession in 2023. That's my opinion. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a deep one. Larry Summers, I talked about him on the show yesterday, he said he thinks there's going to be a deep V. He thinks there's going to be a deep recession. I got news for you, Tom. If Joe Biden's sitting here today at 42% and we have a recession in 2023, he's going to be in the mid-30s. You will not win re-election as a sitting president if you are sub 40 heading into 2024. The question is, is there anyone going to challenge him? I sit here today and think probably not. If he decides to go, who's getting in his way if he decides to go?
Well, and that was the other thing that I was going to say, is that they had a succession plan. It was Biden to Harris in 2024, and that's how they were going to do it. Well, Harris completely stepped in it and stepped on it almost from the jump as the VIP. And now you don't have, Buttigieg's too young still, right? And they're clearly grooming him at some point for a presidential run on the left. You have such this old guard in terms of like Senate and, House candidates that just haven't risen. Who do you really have in the governor's ranks that just jumps out at you and says, oh, this is someone who's got enough cachet, or, like a Ron DeSantis, for example, that can capture attention and really grab a headline, or a Barack Obama, young, bright type thing. It's just
there's only one in the Democratic Party, and that's Gavin Newsom here in California, who's come out and said that he's not going to run if Biden runs.
Right.
So,
and that was the final thing I was going to say, is that the only one I can think of in any of that is Newsom, and he's not touching it. He said that repeatedly. Because why go for from Newsom's position? You're already managing the 7th largest economy in the world. Like, why give yourself a bigger headache? I actually appreciate Newsom's point. I think I did the same thing about him.
Yeah, but I guess my question, it doesn't, he's going to make his announcement. It doesn't seem like there's anyone to challenge him. So, I think you and I actually talked about this. If Biden is the nominee, and we're going to know pretty soon, if he decides to run, if no one else gets in, it will be really interesting to see, because if you contrast 82-year-old Joe Biden, and let's say it's somebody other than Trump, it's DeSantis, pick a name.
Right.
Now you have a contest, okay? And again, as I've said repeatedly on every show, you can pick whoever you want, but whoever the Republicans pick, they have to win a majority of 7 states: North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. Those 7 states will decide the 2024 election. The other 43, I'm sorry, you and I can sit here today and paint them red, blue, red. It ain't going to change, okay?
Yeah.
On 43 out of the 50 states. So the race comes down to 7 states. And if I'm Joe Biden, I'm sitting here saying, okay, well, I think I can pick off Pennsylvania. Hey, Warnock just won in Georgia. You know, maybe I got to get Whitmer's governor of Michigan. Hey, we did well there. He says, I think I'll win those 3. That means for me to lose, I got to lose all 4 of the others. I got to lose Arizona, Nevada. North Carolina probably goes Republican. Wisconsin. I mean, he's sitting there saying, hey, listen, I may be 82, and if Trump's the nominee, I know I'm going to beat Trump. And
yeah,
I'd say he probably would.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, I think that goes into the calculus here. He's sitting there saying, hey, why not take, you know, I'm just, again.
No, I completely agree. The only thing I think I do is I think I make it 8 states. I think I put New Hampshire in there. I just think that they're so chaotic depending on who the candidate is, that I think that they're in play. But past that, no, I don't disagree with your assessment at all.
Yeah. All right, we got a couple minutes to close it out here. Late breaking, right before we came on the air, the January 6th committee has said they're going to do criminal referrals to the Justice Department. Tom, Michael Avenatti just got 14 years handed out yesterday by an Orange County jury. No surprise to most people.
No,
that was a criminal.
not at all.
Stole money from clients. But Tom, the 1-6 committee, what's going on here?
So if I was going to handicap this, and I don't have any insight or things like that, my guess is that they feel like somebody or somebody's perjured themselves in the course of that investigation, and that's the referrals that they're going to recommend. I would be shocked if they go after Trump. Donald Trump has enough problems, already has the special, everything. He's got, the jury's in with his companies, like the whole 9 yards. Like, that dude's got enough. And I don't think the political calculus is worth it right now. But I do think, what I really wonder is, what did Mark Meadows say in all of that? Knowing that Cassidy Hutchinson is the one that, that was the star witness. What did sort of that ever revolving group of lawyers that just moved in and out of that White House over 4 years that, were around him? What did they do? What did the Flynn's of the world do? There were so many people that were in and out of that timeline, that I would be, outside of Barr. I think Barr's safe. I really wonder who in that sort of lawyerly / chief of staff advisory circle do they feel like they can nail? Because I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think that they feel like someone perjured themselves and they own them, and that's what they're going to recommend. Because, the one thing about that committee that, as much as some people want to call her a rhino, and that just absolutely floors me when it comes to Liz Cheney. Like, Liz Cheney is literally Republican royalty, or as close as it's ever been for the party. Like, that woman is deep, deep, deep red. And she's also super pragmatic. Like, I don't think she's going to let that come through as the assistant chair or whatever she is of that, without really feeling like there is something that they can hang a pelt on the wall, because this is ultimately her legacy. Well, she's out. She's not coming back in 20.
She's done. And
and I don't think she's going to leave. I don't think she's leaving unless she feels like really strong with that. This is her swan song, and that's the one thing that I've always felt about this. And I've talked to people. It's like, well, Liz isn't going out on a sour note. She's going out on a high note. So if she thinks she's got it, I think that's what it's going to boil down to.
Well, this is breaking news right for the show, so we're going to keep an eye on it, folks, over the next days and weeks. And Tom, we'll see how that plays itself out. So listen, thank you for joining me again today, post-election, and giving your analysis. It's always fun, and even
Yeah,
though
man.
you're the centrist and I'm the conservative, there's not that much between us on there.
No,
and,
not at all.
At the end of the day, we want what's best for this country. So, Tom, thanks.
Amen to that.
Thanks again for your opinions. Good luck. Have great holidays coming up, and we'll be talking soon. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas, brother, if I don't talk to you before then.
Sounds great. All right, folks, that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. A great Texan, Richard Battle's going to be with us. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a good evening.